Namaste to everyone. This session I will be dealing with one of the important chapter of plant physiology, that is photosynthesis. Photosynthesis, right? Probably this is why this chapter is important, because the entire world is because of this process. Suppose this process is stopped, suppose the organisms who carry out this process are gone, they become extinct, then no more life on this earth, because food itself is not available to anybody. That is why this is the most significant process in the entire world, right? And this photosynthesis is a part of something called a unit in biology called bioenergetics. A unit in biology called bioenergetics, where it deals with the energy related issues in or among biological organisms. That is the production of energy, utilization of energy, that means release of energy, everything. So this has got two parts. One is the endergonic, the other is exergonic. So there are two metabolic actions, endergonic reaction and exergonic reaction. Endergonic reaction is also called anabolic process. Exergonic is also called catabolic process. So here this means that there is production of energy and storage of energy, production of energy and storage of energy, but here it is the destruction of energy and release of energy. So energy is stored here, that stored energy is broken down and released here. So both are very much important, both are the two faces of a single coin, hence both are required. Hagadrinda, these two are the part of bioenergetics. Example for anabolic process is this, photosynthesis, and example for exergonic process is respiration, the process of respiration. So one doesn't complete the entire thing, both are needed. Of course, if you consider animals, it is only respiration, there is no photosynthetic phenomenon. We are talking about plants, so plants have got both photosynthesis as well as respiration. So what is photosynthesis? It is an endergonic reaction. It is an anabolic process where the energy is produced and stored, correct? So it is represented as an anabolic process where the simple raw materials like carbon dioxide and water combine together in the presence of solar energy mediated by the pigments to produce the food, that is glucose, and to release oxygen as a byproduct. This is the consolidated representation of the process of photosynthesis. So raw materials are very simple ones. One is carbon dioxide, the other is water. So 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, 12 molecules of water to release 1 molecule of glucose, 6 molecules of oxygen and 6 molecules of water again. So now it is balanced, 6 carbon, 6 carbon, and 12, 24, 36, 12, 12, 24, 6, 12, 18 plus 6, 24. So it is balanced. So Now you consider this. What has happened? The two raw materials under the influence of solar energy and pigments have produced the energy, and very importantly the oxygen has been released. So the process is of two significances. One, it produces the energy required by or required for all the organisms of this entire world. Secondly, it also releases pure form of oxygen which is needed for all the aerobic organisms. That is why, to repeat the statement that I made earlier, if green plants are not there, if photosynthetes are not there, then there is no pure oxygen available and there is no food available. That is why this is the most significant process in this entire world. Then, from where do we get carbon dioxide? Carbon dioxide is obtained from atmosphere and is absorbed by leaves. Water is obtained from soil and is absorbed by roots. And this is produced in the leaves. This is liberated into the atmosphere. This will also be liberated. So this is the simple representation of entire process. Hagadrinda, here what actually is happening here, the thing is that the solar energy is converted into the chemical energy which will be converted into food energy. So this chemical energy is always ATP. So where actually this happens? This conversion of solar energy into chemical energy takes place inside the chloroplast. This conversion of chemical energy into food involves both chloroplast as well as cytoplasm. Right? This conversion starts in chloroplast, ends in cytoplasm. So this is very, very important, but this takes place only inside the chloroplast. Hence, in photosynthesis, photo is light, synthesis food. So using the solar energy, the synthesis of food takes place. That is why it is called photosynthesis. Right. Now, you know that the process takes place inside the chloroplast. It is a cell organelle, it's a plastid found only in green organisms, particularly in higher organisms. Okay. And this chloroplast has got two wall layers. That is the outer membrane and inner membrane, and this entire inner space is called the stroma, and in the stroma there are many stacked particles. Each stacked structure is called the what is that? I'll come to that later. This is the individual member of this is called granum. Individual member of granum is called thylakoid. Okay, this piled or stacked thylakoids will form a granum. And what is a thylakoid? Thylakoid is a flat coin-like structure. So when you pile up those thylakoids, you get granum. And all these neighboring grana are interconnected by the connectives. Those connectives are called stroma lamellae or the fret membranes. Okay, and remember the pigments are located inside the thylakoids. Various types of pigments are located inside the thylakoids. So that is why thylakoids are very much important. Of course, the stroma will have all the enzymes needed for the process of protein synthesis. Along with that, there will be double-stranded DNA and ribosomes, 70S type of ribosomes, all will be there in this particular cell organelle. Right. So this is the structure of chloroplast. Next, coming to the pigments. Pigments. Say, pigments are the most important components needed for the process of protein synthesis, right? So pigments are mainly classified into two types. What is the job of pigments? Pigments, the job is the absorption of solar energy. The solar energy, that is light energy, is mainly trapped by pigments. Right. So these pigments, they are present inside the thylakoids. They are present inside the thylakoids. And each thylakoid will have a specific number of pigments of different categories. These pigments are of two types. One, the primary pigment, the other is accessory pigment. Okay, primary pigment and accessory pigment. What is the difference between the two? Primary pigment is the main pigment, it is the captain. So it is the main pigment required for the absorption. Accessory pigment means other than the primary pigment. Among the given pigments, one will act as primary pigment. All the rest will be considered as accessory pigments, right? So primary pigment will always be chlorophyll A. Rest of the pigments are considered as accessory pigments like chlorophyll B, chlorophyll C, xanthophylls, carotenoids, and etc. Whichever are there, all of them will form accessory pigments. That means these pigments do not have a direct role to play. Only this has got the direct control over the process. That means the conversion of light energy into chemical energy will be done by this. Whereas all these will transfer their light energy to the primary pigment. Right? All these accessory pigments, whatever light energy they have absorbed, they will transfer it to the primary pigment. So that is the major thing. Hope you are clear. Is that fine? So primary pigments, accessory pigments. And each of these pigments has a specific wavelength of energy to be absorbed. Okay, not that all the light energy, all the wavelengths of light will be absorbed by the same pigment. Different pigments will absorb different wavelengths of energy light. Okay, so that is how the compensation or the overall management happens inside the chloroplast. Now, you know, there is something called the what is that? The visible spectrum. We have something called visible spectrum in the light, the light rays, radiations. So visible spectrum is nothing but VIBGYOR. VIBGYOR, right? So this visible spectrum, among these different radiations, which is the most effective radiation for the effective photosynthetic output? So it has been found that the red, blue are the most effective wavelengths, particularly red. The maximum yield occurs in the red spectrum and the least output comes in the green light. So least rate of photosynthesis takes place in green light, maximum rate of photosynthesis takes place in red light, particularly followed by blue, then yellow, and then least is green. Idu perfect gottirbeku nimage. Maximum rate of photosynthesis is in red, least rate of photosynthesis is in green. And how was this proved? How was this accepted? We have got different theories. Rather, one particular experiment was carried out, right? And that experiment proposed the absorption spectrum and action spectrum. Absorption spectrum and action spectrum. What is the difference between the two? What is the difference between the two? In absorption spectrum is a graphical representation which shows the maximum light being absorbed by pigments. Which particular wavelength of light has been absorbed maximum? So it shows the red, blue, like this. So this is maximum absorption. So this maximum absorption was also in red and blue. Red and blue. Okay. Now what is action spectrum? Action spectrum is about the yield, output. In which particular wavelength the maximum yield has been obtained, that is action spectrum. Action anta helidre the real process, real outcome, real result. So here ivaga nodi, suppose idu absorption spectrum. Action spectrum hegirutte antandre action spectrum ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ? ನೋಡಿ, this is action spectrum, this is absorption spectrum. Now you tell me where the action is highest. Action is highest where absorption is highest. Least the absorption, least the action. Maximum the absorption, maximum will be the yield, maximum will be the action. So considering this, it has been found that maximum absorption will be done at red, maximum action will also be at red. Okay, maximum red, maximum action, maximum output, maximum yield is also at red. So this is another important point that you need to keep in mind. But it has also been tested that the difference between continuous light and intermittent light. Difference between continuous light and the intermittent light. ಏನು continuous light and intermittent light ಅಂದ್ರೆ, continuous light means continuously from morning 8 o'clock to evening 5 o'clock continuously light is given. Intermittent light means a little exposure to light, then stop, darkness, again exposed to light, again stop, again exposed to light. So this is intermittent light. You are not going to give the light or exposure continuously. So that is the intermittent light. So when it was found that whenever this was tested, it was found that yield was highest here. Yield was highest here, comparatively it was less here. So the maximum photosynthetic yield will be in intermittent light. Why it is so? Because when, say for example, between 10 to 11 am the light is given, 11 to 11:30 not given, dark, here light. Now what happens is that this light energy has been absorbed here, this light has been converted into ATP. So when the darkness is given, here no light alva, here no light is given, so whatever ATP produced here can be completely utilized because there is no more light, so the space is free. So this ATP can be completely utilized, so the food can be completely and it can be produced very comfortably. By the time you start the light exposure at 11:30 to 12:30, here this will be totally finished, empty. So now it can start afresh, right? So this is what it is. Is that fine? There is something called red drop effect. Red drop effect. Red drop effect means when the red light beyond 680 nanometers was given, when the plant is exposed to the light beyond 680 nanometers, the photosynthetic rate decreased. Photosynthetic rate decreased. That is drop. So this is red here, this is red. So when the light beyond red is given, the photosynthetic rate decreased. That is called red drop effect. Opposite to this, there is something called Emerson enhancement effect. Emerson enhancement effect. Emerson enhancement effect means when a plant was given a mixture of light, that is red and far red light, when a plant was exposed to a mixture of light variation, wavelengths of red and far red wavelengths, there was increase in the photosynthetic rate. Now compare these two. When only one wavelength of light was given, then there was no increase, rather there was decrease in the photosynthetic output. When the mixture of light was given, there was increase. So it means that the photosynthetic rate will be less in monochromatic light, but it will be high when mixture of wavelengths lights are provided. And it is particularly so in white light. In white light, rate of photosynthesis is very high. In white light, it is very much high. Okay. So this is the red drop effect and Emerson's enhancement effect. Right. Moving on to the next concept. I told you that the pigments are there inside the thylakoid of chloroplast. But in what where they are located inside thylakoid? They are located inside the thylakoid in the form of photosystem. Photosystem. So inside the thylakoid, pigments are present in the form of photosystem. Then what is photosystem? Photosystem is a combination of pigments and proteins. Photosystem is a combination of pigments and proteins. Pigments we already have studied, primary pigment and accessory pigment, both are there, plus proteins. So that is a photosystem. Ivaga, suppose see, this is a chloroplast, this is a thylakoid. Now inside the thylakoids, you find the photosystems in this way. See, each is a photosystem. Now what will be there in each photosystem? In each photosystem there are pigments and proteins together. Right. Next. Again, each photosystem has got three components. Each photosystem has got three components. Which are they? One, the photochemical reaction center, then light harvesting complex, then the electron carriers. These are the three components of each photosystem. This has got three components, this also, this also. So each of the photosystem has all these three components. Okay. What is the difference among all these? Photochemical reaction center is always the primary pigment. Remember, photochemical reaction center is always the primary pigment. It is always the primary pigment. Light harvesting complex is all the accessory pigments. Electron carriers are actually the proteins. They are actually the proteins. Understood? So primary pigments, accessory pigments. See, these two will be here. These are here. So altogether it is called photosystem. And there are two types of photosystems. There are two types of photosystems. They are photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. There are two types of photosystems. Now in each, all the three components will be there. This also has three components. This also has three components. Then what is the difference between the two? Difference is that photosystem 1, the photochemical reaction center is for P700. Here it is P680. P680. So this is one difference. Photochemical reaction center. This is one difference. Second difference with reference to electron carriers. Accessory components are the same. Light harvesting complex will be the same in both. Electron carriers they differ from one to another. Okay. To name a few, here in photosystem 1 it is the A0, A1, FX, FAB, ferredoxin, etc. Here it is the plastoquinone, then FRS, then the cytochrome B say complex, cytochrome F complex, plastocyanin, etc. So these are the different electron carriers, protein components. What is the other difference? Photosystem 2 is associated with the oxygen evolving complex. Here oxygen evolving complex is absent. I repeat, photosystem 2 is associated with oxygen evolving complex. That means oxygen is evolved. But here it is not there. Then fourth, photosystem 1 is found in the overlapped region. But this is found in the overlapped region. Overlapped region. And artha eno, let this see this. Suppose this is the granum, each is a thylakoid. Now look at that. This is photosystem 2, 2, 2, 2. So overlapped region has got photosystem 2, but non-overlapped region has got photosystem 1. Like this. So overlapped part has got photosystem 2, non-overlapped part has got photosystem 1. These are the major differences between photosystem 1 and photosystem 2. Understood? Next, with all these backgrounds, let us enter into the mechanism. Mechanism part of photosynthesis. Mainly, the mechanism part of photosynthesis has got two stages. Which are they? One, light reaction. The other is dark reaction, light reaction and dark reaction. So these are the two phases. Now what are the major differences between the two? Light reaction is also called Hill's reaction. Dark reaction is also called Blackman reaction. Blackman's reaction. Light reaction takes place in the thylakoids. Dark reaction takes place in the stroma and the cytoplasm. Stroma and cytoplasm. Light reaction needs light. Dark reaction doesn't need light. In light reaction, light energy is converted into chemical energy. Here, using the chemical energy, the food is synthesized. Using the chemical energy, food is synthesized. Another difference. One more difference is that in light reaction, the water is broken down and oxidized into oxygen. In light reaction, water is oxidized into oxygen. In dark reaction, carbon dioxide is reduced to glucose. Okay, water is oxidized to oxygen, carbon dioxide is reduced to glucose. One more difference we have, I will write at the top. Which one is not seen? Okay, I will write these at the top. So here the water is oxidized to oxygen. Here carbon dioxide is reduced to glucose. Plus here energy molecules like ATP and NADPH2 are produced. Here the glucose is produced. So these are all the major differences between light reaction and dark reaction. Very important, right? Move on to let us study each of the stages individually. The light reaction, which is already told, occurs in the thylakoid part of the chloroplast, where light energy is converted into chemical energy. This occurs in 3 stages, 3 steps. 1. The photoexcitation of chlorophyll, photolysis of water, and photophosphorylation. So these are the 3 steps of light reaction. All are taking place inside the thylakoid. Now what happens is that photoexcitation of chlorophyll, that means the chlorophyll A will absorb the light energy. Chlorophyll molecule, primary pigment, absorbs the light energy and jumps to higher level because it becomes energy rich. Such energy enriched chlorophyll becomes excited, it becomes very happy. So it becomes rich with energy. So this is the excited chlorophyll. Simultaneously, photolysis, breakdown of water molecule takes place. So it is water molecule in the presence of light energy, photolysis in the presence of presence of light energy will be broken down into protons, electrons and oxygen being released. This is photolysis of water, again inside the thylakoid. Photophosphorylation means, phosphorylation is nothing but addition of inorganic phosphate to ADP in the presence of photo light energy to produce ATP. So these are the 3 steps taking place inside the thylakoid, right? So chlorophyll excites, water gets broken down and the ATP will be generated. Hope you are clear. Next, particularly in this case, this one. Before that, photolysis of water always is associated with the PS2. Photolysis of water is always associated with the PS2 and it is always catalyzed in the presence of manganese and chloride. The minerals like manganese and chloride. Please remember this. This phosphorylation always occurs by the transfer of electrons. transfer of electrons. So it is called electron transfer and photophosphorylation. So that transfer of electrons follows two pathways. One is cyclic transfer of electrons, the other is non-cyclic transfer of electrons. So two pathways will be there. So that we will be discussing in detail now. Right? What's that? To begin with, non-cyclic electron transfer and photophosphorylation. Non-cyclic electron transfer and photophosphorylation. So here it is represented like this. See, this is non-cyclic pathway of electron transfer. What is that? The light energy has been absorbed by PS2 as well as by PS1. In both the cases there is photoexcitation. Excited energy pigment has transferred the energy, electron energy in the form of electrons. Those electrons will move to the PS1. So as the excitation occurs, there will be a hole created because this gets excited. When this jumps here, there is a vacancy being created. So that vacancy is called hole. Simultaneously a hole is created here. Now the energy of this is transferred to PS1. That is why hole is closed down, filled up. So electrons of this are now here. This excited chlorophyll will transfer the electrons and will be absorbed by NADP and reduced to NADPS2. NADPS2. So electrons of this are here. Electrons of this are here. Nowhere electrons have come back. The hole is filled up here. But what about this? Hole is still there. That is why the electrons released during photolysis will fill up the gap. Thus the hole is filled up. Right? So here the photolysis of water is associated with PS2, which occurs in the presence of manganese and chloride. Got it? So electrons of this are here, of this are here, of this are here. That is why it is called non-cyclic photophosphorylation. The electrons have not come back to the place of their origin, so non-cyclic, and here there is production of ATP and NADPS2. So we have got two benefits. This is in non-cyclic, but in cyclic, what happens? There is no involvement of PS2, only PS1, hence there is production of only ATP and there is no formation of NADS2, right? So what is the basic difference between cyclic and non-cyclic? Cyclic produces ATP, non-cyclic produces ATP as well as NADPS2 plus oxygen. So that is called non-cyclic photophosphorylation. Thus, at the end of light reaction in the thylakoid, ATP and NADPS2 are produced. But how ATP is generated, phosphorylation, it is explained by chemiosmotic theory. It is explained by chemiosmotic theory, and chemiosmotic theory, it is the osmosis of chemicals. What is that? See, this is chloroplast, this is thylakoid. This thylakoid is associated with the F0, F1 particles like this. Now here is light reaction taking place, non-cyclic, cyclic transfer is taking place here. So what happens is that the protons are here in the stroma, photolysis of water will release protons into the thylakoid lumen, plus transfer of electrons will also release protons into the lumen. Thus accumulation of protons inside the lumen produces proton motive force. Accumulation of protons in the lumen will produce proton motive force, which will transfer the protons into the stroma, during which the ATP is formed. ATP is formed. Okay. So it is found that for the formation of one ATP, three protons have to come out. And this is called F0 F1 particle. Okay, this is called F0 F1 particle, which also acts as ATP synthase or ATP synthetase. So what is osmosis? Movement of water from the higher concentration to lower concentration. Here it is chemical. Movement of protons from higher concentration to lower concentration across a semi-permeable membrane. So it is called chemiosmotic theory, and it was proposed by Michel. Right. Next. Thus, ATP and NADPS2 are produced. Coming to the dark reaction occurs in the stroma. In the stroma already there are NADPS2 and ATP is being generated during light reaction. So what happens in stroma is that, now look at the equation. Carbon dioxide plus water we have written in the beginning. In that, water has been used in light reaction. Now left part is the carbon dioxide. So during the dark reaction, carbon dioxide will be accepted by a 5-carbon compound called ribulose biphosphate. In the presence of an enzyme, the most rich enzyme in the world called Rubisco, to produce a 3-carbon compound called PGA, phosphoglyceric acid. Understand? Since the first product is a 3-carbon compound, it is also called C3 pathway. Now, this PGA becomes PGAL by phosphoglyceraldehyde by the use of NADPS2 and ATP. Okay. So what happens here is that now some PGAL will remain in the stroma, some come out into the cytoplasm, and in the cytoplasm they will produce the sucrose or glucose, whichever, and the PGAL that is remained in the stroma will be used in the formation of RUBP again by the use of ATPs. From where do you get ATP and NADPS2? From light reaction. So this is actually the dark reaction. But to produce one molecule of glucose, you need 6 turns of dark reaction. You need 6 turns of C3 pathway. This C3 pathway was discovered by Melvin Kelvin, hence also called Kelvin cycle. It is also called Kelvin cycle. So 6 turns produces 1 glucose. Hagagi it is 6 RUBP, 6 carbon dioxide. These are 4 carbon. This is 5 carbon. This is 1 carbon. to produce 6 carbon, which is unstable and gets divided into 2. Hence you get 3 carbon. So 12 molecules of 3 carbon, 12 molecules of PGAL, 12 molecules of ATP, and 12 molecules of NADPH2. So among 12, 10 will come out, 10 will remain in the stroma, 2 come out into the PGAL, 10 remain here to generate again 6 molecules of RUMP, which is a 5 carbon compound. This is a 3 carbon compound. So now how many ATPs? 12 plus 6. So you need 18 ATPs and 12 NADPH2. So to produce 1 molecule of glucose during Calvin cycle, you need 6 turns of Calvin cycle and 18 ATPs and 12 NADPH2 molecules. Got it? So this is very important, right? So this is Rubisco, which catalyzes the acceptance of carbon dioxide. This is called C3 pathway or Calvin cycle. But in all the plants this doesn't happen. Particularly plants growing in high temperature area, dry area, high temperature and dry area, they carry out another type of mechanism called C4 pathway. The plants which carry out C3 pathway are called C3 plants. Plants that carry out C4 pathway are called C4 plants. So this is C4 pathway, and it was discovered by Hatch and Slack, so called Hatch and Slack pathway. Hatch and Slack pathway. C3 pathway is called so because the first stable product was a 3 carbon compound. Here the first stable product is a 4 carbon compound. 4 carbon compounds like oxaloacetic acid or any other 4 carbon compounds. Now what happens here is that this C4 pathway occurs why? Because there is something called in plants like the sugarcane. In plants like sugarcane, there is something called Cran's anatomy. In the leaves of sugarcane like plants, there is something called Cran's anatomy. Cran's anatomy means, see, suppose this is the leaf, this is vascular bundle, xylem, phloem. This is mesophyll. And here are the bundle sheath cells. Here are bundle sheath cells. These bundle sheath cells are multiple in their layering, because in the normal cases you will have only one layer of bundle sheath, but here you will have multiple layer of bundle sheath like this. And they show dimorphic condition. The leaves show dimorphic condition. What is the dimorphic condition? These bundle sheath cells have large chloroplast and agranal chloroplast. Mesophyll cells have got small chloroplast but granule chloroplast. These are less in number, these are more in number. So this condition is called dimorphic condition. Cran's anatomy because there is multiple layer of bundle sheath cells. This will have some impact. Plus, these multiple mesophyll cells do not have Rubisco. These have Rubisco. This is another difference. Bundle sheath cells have got Rubisco, mesophyll cells do not have Rubisco. So what happens there is that initially in the mesophyll cells, the carbon dioxide will be absorbed. Carbon dioxide will be absorbed. That will be absorbed by a 3 carbon compound called phosphoenol pyruvate. Phosphoenol pyruvate in the presence of an enzyme called pepcase. In the presence of an enzyme called pepcase. So this phosphoenol pyruvate 3 carbon compound plus 1 carbon compound produces a 4 carbon compound called oxaloacetate. Now this oxaloacetate will be transferred to bundle sheath cells. Bundle sheath cells, and here oxaloacetate will be converted into again phosphoenol pyruvate plus carbon dioxide. Now this phosphoenol pyruvate goes back to mesophyll and absorbs 1 more carbon dioxide. Since the first stable product is a 4 carbon compound, the pathway is called C4 pathway. And now this carbon dioxide enters C3 pathway. Now here Rubisco will take the participation. Here pepcase, here Rubisco. So such a pathway is called the C4 pathway. Significance is that this C4 pathway is very much important because this produces maximum yield when we compare to C3 pathway. C3 pathway will have some shortcomings because C3 pathway undergoes something called photorespiration. But C4 pathway does not show photorespiration, so maximum utilization of light energy takes place. Total conversion of carbon dioxide into food takes place. But here when this happens, we won't find it. Why? Because photorespiration means, see, respiration normally occurs in oxygen, no, in the presence of oxygen. Photosynthesis is in the presence of carbon dioxide. So here what happens is that when carbon dioxide is being absorbed by plants and photosynthesis is going on, suddenly in the surroundings the oxygen concentration increases. Okay, oxygen concentration increases, so photosynthesis stops, respiration continues. This is called photorespiration, and this is always carried out by Rubisco. Why? Because this Rubisco has got the attachment sites for carbon dioxide as well as for oxygen. Attachment sites for carbon dioxide as well as oxygen. When surrounding has got more carbon dioxide, Rubisco accepts carbon dioxide and photosynthesis takes place. When surrounding has got more oxygen than carbon dioxide, then Rubisco accepts oxygen, not carbon dioxide, leading to respiration. So this is the problem where photosynthesis stops, respiration takes place. So the process does not yield ATP nor food. So it's a total loss. It doesn't yield either ATP nor food. And this photorespiration occurs in 3 organelles. It starts in chloroplast, then transfers to another organelle called peroxisome, and finally gets over in mitochondria. How the carbon dioxide is converted into the glycolate, a 2 carbon compound, phosphoglycolate, then into glycolate, Because the two carbon compound is produced, photorespiration is also called C2 pathway. It is also called C2 pathway. This glycolate enters into peroxisome where it is converted into glycine. This glycine enters the mitochondria where it is converted into another amino acid called serine and carbon dioxide. So this is photorespiration. So nowhere you find the formation of ATP or food. So this is the danger in case of photorespiration. But photorespiration does not occur in C4 because rubisco is not there in mesophyll. So there is no direct contact of the rubisco with the oxygen. It takes part only in bundle sheath, which is not in direct contact with the atmosphere. So this is something about the C2, C3, C4 pathway. We also have one more mechanism called CAM. CAM mechanism. CAM refers to crassulation acid mechanism. Crassulation acid mechanism, because it was for the first time noticed in the plant family called Crassulaceae. Okay, in the plant family Crassulaceae, this mechanism is found. What happens there? This is found in the plants, like in the plants where stomata are scotoactive. Where the stomata are scotoactive. What do you mean by scotoactive? The stomata are closed at night. Open at night. They are closed during the daytime. Okay, stomata closed at daytime and open at night are called scotoactive. So what happens during the night? The carbon dioxide will be absorbed by the cells. During the daytime, no carbon dioxide absorption because no stomata is open. So carbon dioxide will be stored in the leaf cells in the form of some acid, oxaloacetic acid or some carbonic acids. In the form of some carbonic acids, the carbon dioxide is stored during night. Next day, during the daytime, that will be again converted into carbon dioxide and used for C3 pathway. So since the acid is formed in these members of Crassulaceae family, the mechanism is called CAM. Okay, it's called CAM. So example for this are aloe vera or the cacti, etc. Okay, so this is another mechanism with reference to photosynthesis. And finally coming to the law of limiting factors. Law of limiting factors says that whenever a process is conditioned as to its maximum by a number of separate factors, one of the factors will act as limiting factors which will limit the process, because the process is influenced by many factors like the external factors and internal factors. External factors are carbon dioxide, oxygen availability, availability of water and the presence of light, temperature, etc. Internal factors are enzymes, pigments, leaf structure, etc. Lots of things. So what does the limiting factors, law of limiting factors proposed by Blackman says that if all are supportive, photosynthesis will be maximum. If one of them is not supportive, the photosynthetic rate will come down. That is Blackman's law of limiting factors. Okay, so these are some of the important aspects, and here when the oxygen concentration increases, photosynthetic rate decreases. This effect is called Warburg effect. When oxygen concentration increases, photosynthetic rate decreases. That effect is called Warburg effect. Light intensity, light duration, quality of light, all will have a role on in the photosynthetic phenomenon. More the carbon dioxide, if it goes beyond the limit, then it will have a negative impact over the photosynthetic rate. Water availability should be there. Okay, so these are all various aspects of photosynthetic phenomenon, and there are many scientists who have contributed into the field of photosynthesis, like Priestley, Ingenhousz, or the Blackman, or Decker and Teo, Hales. So many are there. Please look at all these issues of photosynthesis and study well. Okay, thank you.